Well, with Big East Media Day just about a week away, we're going through the preseason storylines across the conference, and who better to do it than from the Providence Journal, Kevin McNamara, and from the Omaha World-Herald, Jon Nyatawa. They cover Providence and Creighton, respectively, as well as the whole league throughout the season. Kevin, I'll start with you. What preseason storyline fascinates you most in the conference?
Well, I think the amount of returnees, John, is pretty interesting. That really up and down the entire league. The Big East, I think, has the most percentage of returnees of any big conference in the country. And, and this league has not been blessed with a lot of one-and-done talent. The teams that have won have had experience. So I just think it's the deepest league. And every single, media person and coach says this at the start of every season and doesn't always come to fruition. But, this league is extremely deep this year, and that should portend to an awful lot of good teams.
No doubt about it. There's certainly a deep race for Player of the Year in this conference. We'll get to that in a moment. But, John, it's well known here that there could very well be 4 NCAA tournament locks, but the thing about this league entering this year is that 5 to 8 in the conference is a bit of a mystery. How do you see things playing out here?
Yeah, I don't know what to expect after the top 4 teams. I mean, I think in terms of where it's going to fall in terms of preseason predictions across the country for this league. I mean, I think teams like Creighton, Marquette, Butler, St. John's, they do have some returning talent, but there's some questions there as well. So I'm eager to see it. I think the amount of returnees across the conference that Kevin alluded to, that it might trim the gap just a little bit that Villanova has enjoyed, created for itself, of course, but also enjoyed over the last few years between it and the rest of the conference. So maybe we'll have a challenger to the reigning champions. That's something that I'll be watching for sure.
Are you buying that, Kevin, that there is a challenger to Villanova for the regular season?
I am buying that, John. I think this is, they should be picked first. They are on paper. Especially with a player like Jalen Brunson leading the way, very dangerous. Last year I didn't think that they had a team that could win 14 games, in the league, but Jay Wright seems to do that falling out of bed every year in this league. But, if you had to, put a gun to my head and say, will Villanova repeat? I think this is the one year that I say that they will not win the regular season.
Well, let's turn to the Providence Friars, and you reported last week that Emmett Holt, one of the major contributors of this team, is out with an injury and could very likely miss the season opener. What's the latest?
Yeah, I would extend that. Emmett has been off campus. He's been hospitalized for a long stretch and really hasn't been on campus for 3 weeks to a month. So obviously, not in class, not eating correctly. He's been very ill with an abdominal issue, is what Providence has said. And I would be surprised if he can play in the first semester. He could be gone for the year. Obviously it's awful tough to say on October 12th, whatever it is today, how someone's going to be feeling at Christmas time, let alone in January. But Emmett is very ill, and Providence is very concerned about his status for this upcoming season.
What is Ed Cooley's plan to replace what he has done?
Well, the good news is that this is easily the deepest team that Providence has had in Cooley's time. The very impressive young big men that we're going to play anyways, even with Emmett Holt around. Khalif Young, a sophomore center, has made really big gains in the summertime. And Providence is really excited about Nate Watson, a 6'9" freshman from the D.C. area. So those two big guys were going to play anyways. I think now they're going to play even more time. And at forward, he has seniors, Isaiah Jackson, Rodney Bullock, Jalen Lindsay, an awful lot of experienced players. Alpha Diallo, a sophomore, is 6'6" combo, swing guy. They have a lot of options, at those positions that Holt was going to play anyways. But, if you asked me 2 months ago, I may have said that Emmett Holt was Providence's best player. He's vastly improved and was really playing well. So it's really unfortunate for him.
We turn to Creighton, the Blue Jays coming off an NCAA tournament berth. John, what needs to happen for them to return to the big dance?
Well, they're going to have to get some contributions from some new faces, or at least players that hadn't necessarily been in those high-profile, big-time roles yet in their career. I mean, they lose, if you include Maurice Watson in the mix, 5 rotation players from last year's team. Also, Justin Patton is among that group, the NBA draft pick. So there's going to be some new faces and new places, and they have to sort of work out those roles and figure out how everything gets sort of worked together. But there is talent, and they've got maybe one of the more electric and explosive wing combinations in the Big East, maybe in the country, in Marcus Foster and Kyrie Thomas. And so they know what they're going to get out of those two, but just kind of molding the rest of the team around that duo, I think, is the challenge for this team. But they're going to play fast. Their identity hasn't changed. They want to be a little bit better defensively, and crashing the glass will be important for this team as well. So I think it'll be interesting over the next few weeks just to see how the coaching staff puts it together, who steps up. They're excited about their freshmen, Mitch Ballack, Tyshawn Alexander, Jacob Epperson. All 3 of those guys are top 100 recruits that have the potential to contribute right away. So how it fits together, I'm not sure at this moment, but I'll be intrigued to watch over the coming weeks as they continue practice and start sorting out some roles.
Is Caleb Joseph this team's point guard, or is that still a question that remains to be answered, maybe a by committee scenario?
That is the question. That might be the question. Maybe the question that I hear from fans the most is who's going to play point guard. Obviously, Maurice Watson fit the system so well. Once he got injured last year, it seemed like Creighton never fully found an answer. A guy never really emerged to take that spot, take the reins there. So they've had all offseason to train and audition and evaluate these guys, and they still don't really have an answer either. Caleb Joseph's probably the front runner, I would say, but there's 3 other players who are taking reps at that spot, and the coach's mind, they're still evaluating just like it would have been, as if it were June. So, I think that battle, that competition, I guess you could say, is ongoing, and eventually Creighton will have a starting point guard, but I do expect multiple players to contribute at that spot going throughout the season.
Providence, meanwhile, has an interesting situation. We know what Kyron Cartwright can do, Kevin McNamara, but at the same time, they welcome in Ashton Langford. And while we believe that it's going to be Kyron Cartwright at the 1 firmly, how exactly does Ashton Langford fit into the picture as a freshman?
Well, he's just a good player. I think Ed Cooley will definitely play the 2 of them together at times. I think that could be a very potent attacking guard-centric offense. Again, you throw someone like Diallo and a Jalen Lindsey, from multiple, perimeter players who can play. That's what college basketball is really morphed into. Obviously, a lot of three-point shooting. Kyron Cartwright might be Providence's best three-point shooter, so he could play off the ball a little bit when Makai has it. But I think they'll both have the ball an awful lot. And maybe, Kyron won't have to play 35, 36 minutes, which can take a toll on anyone, especially, a smaller player like Cartwright. Although I am impressed with his weight gain, and he's much more muscular, much more mature as a senior.
Kevin, how the heck did Ed Cooley get this program to the big dance last year? Because I know that's the expectation, but my goodness, what a job he did.
Well, if you really look at what happened in their Big East season, they had a brutal schedule out of the gate. They opened at Xavier and at Butler, lost both of those games by wide margins, and it really woke up the team a little bit. But their first half of the schedule, I believe 5 of the first 8 games were away against really good teams. So, they started slowly. And then when the schedule broke with home games in the second half of the year, they were very fortunate. They played Creighton at Creighton without Watson. They also played Xavier at home without Trevon Blewett. And those are really fortunate breaks for the Friars. There's no 2 ways about it. Those were great RPI wins, really helped Providence. And then they also swept Marquette. So, they had some clutch wins they needed to have, and really finished strong in February, which, clearly the NCAA Tournament Committee looked favorably upon.
Back to Creighton, John. Marcus Foster, a sensational player, an All-Big East first-team selection. But there's word out of Omaha that Kyrie Thomas may have climbed with his offense to be this team's best player. What do you make of that?
Well, I think Marcus Foster is still going to be their go-to scorer. He's going to be the guy that in crunch time they really lean on to get the big-time bucket. But yeah, Kyrie Thomas has become more assertive now. We already know how good he is as a defensive player. Um, the types of ways that he can contribute without the ball in his hands. That he's already done that, but he's tried to be a better, just have a little bit better vision and a feel for when to go, when to attack, and when to be assertive offensively. Marcus already has that. Like you know that when the ball is in his hands, he's looking to either make a play for somebody else or score. Whereas Kyrie Thomas, I mean, his first 2 seasons, he was more of a complementary player. So he's worked on that. That's been a key emphasis for him during the offseason, and it's showing in practice and showing in workouts. And now they just want to keep him progressing on the right track so it shows in games.
What do you also make of Greg McDermott pledging his allegiance over the summer at Creighton? What does it say about that program and the conference that they're in?
Yeah, that was a big storyline over the offseason. I mean, it was sort of a short time period because the Ohio State job opened, and then rather quickly, Greg McDermott and a few other coaches across the country were sort of rumored to be involved. And as we found out, Greg McDermott did, in fact, meet with Ohio State to sort of gauge interest and I guess just test the waters to see if he was actually if that was something that he wanted to do for his career and his family, and he made the decision to stick with Creighton, obviously. And to me, I mean, it not only does it say something about what Creighton means to Greg McDermott and this community and how comfortable he feels here in Omaha, but also, I think it shows that he really does have a lot of faith in Creighton, and if he has that faith, then I would imagine that the players and those associated with the program do too. It's a program that is building. There is still a lot of room to grow, obviously. Just this new association with the Big East, however, has done wonders for the program and its branding nationally and just exposure level. They have great facilities, a ton of fan support, obviously, here in Omaha. So in Greg McDermott's eyes, he thinks that Creighton can compete on the national stage with all the powerhouses that they do have to go up against. He sees no obstacle for the future or the potential of this program, which is why he stayed. So I think that sends a loud message, not only to his players, but the fan base locally. So the expectations are heightened, and they did lose a lot, but the NCAA tournament is the goal, and so that's what this team's going to be aiming for this season.
Let's go rapid fire right now on Shootaround. Kevin, who's the best player in this conference?
I think it's Marcus Foster from Creighton. Big time 2-guard. If I had a fantasy draft, he'd be my number 1 pick.
John?
I'm going to go with Jalen Brunson. I love what he does with the ball in his hands, his ability to navigate ball screens and kind of get in the teeth of the defense, not necessarily always looking to score, but creating for others. He's a guy that is a nightmare to defend.
John, you should have picked the Providence guy. I'm kidding.
Oh.
Yeah, but listen, John, if I had to go out in the middle of the night and I wanted someone on my back, I'm taking Angel Delgado, please.
I'd have to agree with you. If I'm in a dark alley, I'd take him and JP McCura.
And he can get some rebounds for me too.
Who is the most underappreciated player in the conference? Having said that, Kevin?
I would say I'll stay close to home and say Kyron Cartwright. I think a lot of people don't realize he led the Big East in assists by a ton last year because people wouldn't say he was the best point guard in the league, and he was 4th in the country in assists. And that's in replacement, of Chris Dunn. So I think he was a major surprise last year, most improved player in the league, and I think he's still a little under the radar.
John?
Yeah, I mean, part of me wants to stay locally and say Kyrie Thomas. I think what he did defensively last year didn't get enough credit. But JP McCura, I mean, we just brought him up, but man, he just that moxie that he plays with, the intensity. Man, he made some big shots in the games against Creighton that Xavier and Creighton played. So he was a guy that stood out to me that I don't know if he necessarily got enough due for what he did on the court.
Kevin, who's your league dark horse team?
I think Marquette is still really dangerous. If they don't have the best pair of guards in the league, it's really close. I know Providence hated to play against Marquette because it's just really tough to defend Marcus Howard and Andrew Rousey. And, knowing Wojo, I'm sure he has some new guys who I couldn't even name right now who are going to help them even more. And the three-point shot is obviously revolutionized basketball at the NBA level, even more at the college levels. And those two guys really, really can stroke it.
John, I'll hand it to you.
Yeah, dark horse. Can I pick Providence? I mean, I think in Big East circles, a lot of people know that this program's really good, and obviously, Cooley, game after game, comes up with scouting reports that give other opponents difficulties. But I don't know, on the national scale, I don't think Providence is getting enough respect, and I think the coaching job that they did last year and how much they're returning this season, I think they're going to surprise some people. So I mean, Providence is going to be picked in the top half of the league. I don't know if that counts as a dark horse, but I'm going with the Friars. I think they're going to be really good.
There's a lot of great wings in this conference. Who is the best one, Kevin?
Well, I'll stay away from Foster because we already mentioned him. A lot of great wings. Well, I mean, how big are those wings? How high are they flying? Non-point guard, just wing scorers. If we had to do that, I really like maybe Levette from St. John's. I kind of look at those two guys as 2 point guards, but if one of them's got the point, the other doesn't, and really explosive young players. I always think that the biggest jump that college players take are from freshman to sophomore year. So those two guys are going to be, really, really tough to defend once again.
One team that we really haven't talked about is the Butler Bulldogs, and Keelan Martin's a guy that comes to mind, but it seems like there's a lot of questions surrounding this program. They welcome back Martin and Baldwin. John, what's your expectation for this program? Because it seems like it doesn't matter who's at the helm. The Butler way just keeps on rolling.
I know, at any time that you think, well, maybe this might be the year that there's a little bit of a dip, they surprise you and win, 10 or 11 games in conference, and I guess last year won 12 games. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what to expect. I know that Creighton had a lot of respect for Andrew Schrabis and the things that he could do. He didn't necessarily, he wasn't a point guard, but I feel like he had that kind of role. The offense, just the way that it moved around him and formed around him. Creighton, a lot of times they centralize their game plan on how to neutralize him. So I think replacing him won't be an easy task, but yeah, Butler still has talent and a new coaching staff. It doesn't seem to matter in recent years. So I think they'll be still pretty good.
And then finally in this rapid fire, John, who does Creighton consider to be their Big East rival?
Oh my gosh, what a good question. Xavier, I feel like those games come down to the wire every time they play, so maybe that is the answer. Still new to this, though. It's a good question. I don't know if they've figured it out yet.
Kevin?
Well, I think the old school people would say Georgetown, but that's because Providence has been playing Georgetown for a long time, and Georgetown was the big dog in the 80s. But right now, there's no question it's Villanova. Providence has had some success against the Wildcats, which really, no one really has in the, since the league got reconstituted. But the hottest ticket is certainly when the Wildcats come to the Dunkin' Donuts Center.
Kevin, you've covered the Big East and Providence for a long time. In a culture...
Hey, I'm not that old.
Hey, I mean, the Omaha Creighton, the Creighton Blue Jays are fairly new in the conference. That's why I'm going to you for this question, and I'll go to John with a different angle. You're not that old, though. You got a gray head of hair. Might be better than mine, I'd have to say.
Well, I'm Irish.
Here's the thing. In a culture of one and done, and in where we are in the current college basketball culture, the Big East just seems to have that. The Big East seems to stick out. It really does. And the coaches all agree, you got to get old in this league. How much do you think that there's still a great appreciation for this league, Madison Square Garden, and the tradition that lives on?
Well, obviously the improvements, the additions, I should say, to the league of, teams like Creighton and Butler and Xavier were huge. The presidents and the ADs, they picked the right ones. They haven't missed on any of them. But this is a basketball-centric part of the country. And, if we were talking about a stretch, like even down south, traditionally the schools in the Big East have been they've won more basketball games than schools in the SEC, for example. You throw out Kentucky and Florida, traditionally these schools have always won. So nothing really changed. The only thing that really changed are the big football schools just put more money into football. Well, the Big East schools put more money into basketball and don't spend it on anything else. And they're funded the right way. Most of them are paying their coaches at that super high level. To Creighton's credit, they did a great job keeping a really good coach in Greg McDermott. Chris Holtman left Butler, but he's from that part of the country. To go to Ohio State makes some sense. Providence, Ohio State contacted Ed Cooley, for example. He stayed at Providence, and he's resisted overtures from many schools. So funding, good coaches, and winning. And obviously, look at the number of teams that have made the NCAA tournament in the 4 years the league's been going. That's impressive.
John, I have one more for you here. What, if you can tell me, is going on sometimes, or maybe it's every year? So there's a lot of folks that wear red during the fall, and then they change their shirts to blue during the winter.
Yes, interesting phenomenon known out here in Nebraska as a J-skirt. The type of fan who Creighton doesn't have a football team. I mean, so there's a lot of fans out here in Omaha who love their football. Nebraska is a football state by nature, so they need somebody to root for, and they put on the Husker red and root for Nebraska. But then during basketball season, they've whether they've converted themselves or maybe they've been lifelong Creighton fans, they'll put the blue shirts on and root for Creighton. So that's not all Creighton fans. I just want to make that clear. There's a lot of Creighton fans who will never root for Nebraska in any situation whatsoever, whether they're playing football or softball or cricket or whatever. Yeah, it is a phenomenon out here in Nebraska, the J-skirt.
Hey, John, here's a phenomenon in New England, and really, I think the whole East. They don't even know college football exists. The only football in New England is the NFL. In New York, New Jersey, obviously, it's all about the Jets and the Giants. You even go down to the D.C. area, it's the Redskins. I mean, college football is a national game, but not in the East.
No, the Boston College Eagles.
I can't say that moves the needle very much.
No. Hey, I'm from Cleveland. Football's really dying.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a few Ohio State fans in Cleveland.
Yes. They love their Urban Meyer and the one loss to Oklahoma, people freaking out. How's Huskers territory right now? I know it hasn't been good.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of questions, a lot of maybe a little bit of venom being spewed. I think it's a tenuous time, that's for sure. There's the Nebraska is not used to losing, and to have another sort of difficult losing season or games that haven't gone Nebraska's way after a losing season just 2 years ago, that doesn't sit well. So not in a state where the street's clear and the shops are empty on Husker game day. So everyone cares, and that's what a lot of people wrap their falls around. And to not see success, that's unacceptable. So we'll see how Mike Riley and his crew can finish out the season, but there's a lot of pressure on them to do well for sure.
All right, who has more fun at a bar, Greg McDermott or Ed Cooley?
Ooh.
Well,
Greg's pretty outgoing. I mean, I haven't dealt with Ed in a one-on-one setting, but I know Greg can carry on a conversation with pretty much anybody. So he's a very social person.
I can't say that I've been in any social settings with Greg McDermott, but when Ed Cooley walks into any room, especially a bar, people know he's there.
If I could have somebody wake me up every morning, it'd be Ed Cooley. Like I could play for that guy. I think anybody could for any of these coaches. Mm-hmm. Well, guys, thanks so much. I'm looking forward to the season. We talked about the depth. We talked about the stars. This conference Man, you could argue it's deeper than ever. Thanks, Kevin and John.
You're welcome.
Thank you.